THE MERCHANT SHIP by Henry Kendall 1841. The sun o'er the waters was throwing In the freshness of morning its beams, And the breast of the ocean seemed glowing With glittering silvery streams. A bark in the distance was bounding Away for the land on her lee, And the boatswain's shrill whistle resounding Came over and over the sea. The breezes blew fair and were guiding Her swiftly along her track, And the billows successively passing Were lost in the distance aback. The sailors seemed busy preparing For anchor to drop ere the night. The red rusted cables in fathoms Were hauled from their prisons to light. Each rope and each brace was attended By stout hearted sons of the main, Whose voices, in unison blended, Sang many a merry toned strain. Forgotten their care and their sorrow, If of such they had ever known aught, Each soul was wrapped up in the morrow which greeted them not. A sunshiny hope was inspiring And filling their hearts with a glow, Like that on the billows around them, Like the silvery ocean below. As they looked on the heaven before them, Already high looming and near, What else but a joy could invade them, Or what could they feel but a cheer? The eve on the waters was clouded, And gloomy and dark grew the sky. The ocean in blackness was shrouded, And wails of a tempest flew by. The bark o'er the billows, high surging 'Mid showers of the foam crested spray, Now sinking, now slowly emerging, Held onward her dangerous way. The gale in the distance was veering To a point that would drift her on land, And fearfully he that was steering Looked round on the cliff girdled strand. He thought of the home now before him, And muttered sincerely a prayer That morning might safely restore him To friends and to kind faces there. He knew that if once at the mercy of the winds And those mountain like waves, The sun would rise above the waters, The day would return on their graves. Still blacker the heavens were scowling, Still nearer the rock skirted shore, Yet fiercer the tempest was howling, And louder the wild waters' roar. The cold rain in torrents came pouring On deck through the rigging and shrouds, And the deep, pitchy dark was illumined Each moment with gleams from the clouds Of forky shaped lightning, as darting It made a wide pathway on high, And the sound of the thunder incessant Re echoed the breadth of the sky. The light hearted tars of the morning, Now gloomily watching the storm, Were silent, the glare from the flashes Revealing each weather beat form. Their airy built castles all vanished When they heard the wild conflict ahead. Their hopes of the morning were banished, And terror seemed ruling instead. They gazed on the heavens above them, And then on the waters beneath, And shrunk, as foreboding those billows Might shroud them ere morrow in death. Hark! A voice o'er the tempest came ringing, A wild cry of bitter despair, Re echoed by all in the vessel, And filling the wind ridden air. The breakers and rocks were before them, Discovered too plain to their eyes, And the heart bursting shrieks of the hopeless Ascending were lost in the skies. Then a crash, then a moan from the dying Went on the wings of the gale, Soon hushed in the roar of the waters And the tempest's continuing wail. The storm power loudly was sounding Their funeral dirge as they passed, And the white crested waters around them Re echoed the voice of the blast. The surges will show to the morrow A fearful and heart rending sight, And bereaved ones will weep in their sorrow When they think of that terrible night. The day on the ocean returning Saw stilled to a slumber the deep, Not a zephyr disturbing its bosom, The winds and the breezes asleep. Again the warm sunshine was gleaming, Again the warm sunshine was gleaming Refulgently fringing the sea, Its rays to the horizon beaming, And clothing the land on the lee. The billows were silently gliding O'er the graves of the sailors beneath, The waves round the vessel yet pointing The scene of their anguish and death. They seemed to the fancy bewailing The sudden and terrible doom Of those who were yesterday singing And laughing in sight of their tomb. 'Tis thus on the sea of existence. The morning begins without care. Hope cheerfully points to the distance, the future beams sunny and fair, and we at the bark o'er the billows admiring the beauty of the day. With fortune all smiling around us, glide onward our silvery way. We know not nor fear for sorrow ever crossing our pathway in life. We judge from today the tomorrow, and dream not of meeting with strife. This world seems to us as an Eden, and we wonder when hearing around the cries of stern pain and affliction, how such an existence is found. But we find to our cost, when misfortune comes mantling our sun in its night, that the earth was not made to be heaven. Not always our life can be bright. In turn we see each of our daydreams dissolve into air and decay, and learn that the hopes that are brightest fade soonest, far soonest away. These lines were written in 1857, and were suggested by the wreck of the Dunbar, and the writer did not confine himself in particular to a description of that disaster, as may be seen from perusal. H.K. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Oh, Tell Me, Ye Breezes, by Henry Kendall. Read for LibriVox.org by Ruben Whitter. Oh, tell me, ye breezes that spring from the west. Oh, tell me, ere passing away, if late chart's bold spirit has fled to its rest, where moulders the traveller's clay. Perchance as ye flitted unheedlessly by, the long lost was yielding his breath. Perchance ye have borne on your wings the last sigh that scapt from the lone one in death. Tell me, ye breezes, ye traversed the wild, and passed over the desolate spot, where reposeth in silence sweet nature's own child, where slumbers one nearly forgot. Ye answer me not, but are passing away, ye breezes that spring from the west. Unshallowed still moulders the traveller's clay, for unknown is the place of his rest. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Number 3. The Far Future. Early Poems by Henry Kendall. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recorded by Alan Lawley. Australia, advancing with rapid winged stride, shall plant among nations her banners in pride. The yoke of dependence aside she will cast, and build on the ruins and wrecks of the past. Her flag on the tempest will wave to proclaim, 'mong kingdoms and empires her national name. The future shall see it, asleep or unfurled, the shelter of freedom and boast of the world. Australia, advancing like day on the sky, has glimmered through darkness, will blazon on high. A gem in its glitter has yet to be seen, when progress has placed her where England has been. When bursting those limits above she will soar, outstretching all rivals who've mounted before, and resting will blaze with her glories unfurled, the empire of empires and boast of the world. Australia, advancing with power, will entwine with honour and justice a mercy divine. No despot shall trample, no slave shall be bound. Oppression must totter and fall to the ground. The stain of all ages' tyrannical sway will pass like a flash or a shadow away, and shrink to nothing 'neath thunderbolts hurled from the hand of the terror, the boast of the world. Australia, advancing with rapid winged stride, shall plant among nations her banners in pride. The yoke of dependence aside she will cast, and build on the ruins and wrecks of the past. Her flag in the tempest will wave to proclaim 'mong kingdoms and empires her national name, and ages shall see it, asleep or unfurled, the shelter of freedom and boast of the world. I hope the above will not be considered disloyal. It is but reasonable to imagine that Australia will in the far future become an independent nation, that imagination springing as it does from a native-born Australian brain. H.K. End of Section 3. The Far Future. Recorded by Alan Lawley.
Silent Tears by Henry Kendall, read for LibriVox.org by Larry Wilson. What bitter sorrow courses down yon mourner's faded cheek! Those scalding drops betray a grief within too full to speak. Outspoken words cannot express the pangs, the pains of the years. They're ne'er so deep or eloquent as are those silent tears. Here is a wound that in the breast must canker, hidden from sight. Though all without seems sunny day, within 'tis ever night. Yet sometimes from this sacred source the gloomy truth appears. The wind's dark dungeon must have vent if but in silent tears. The world may deem from outward looks that heart is hard and cold, but oh, could they the mantle lift, what sorrows would be told! Then, only then, the truth would show which most the bosom sears, the pain portrayed by burning words, or that by silent tears. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Number 5. Extempore Lines. Early Poems by Henry Kendall. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recorded by Alan Lawley. A morning crowns the western hill. A day begins to reign. A sun awakes o'er distant seas, shall never sleep again. The world is growing old, and men are waxing wise. A mist is cleared, a something falls, like scales from off their eyes. Too long the dark of ignorance has brooded on their way. Too long oppression stood before, excluding light of day. But now they've found the track, and now they've seen the dawn. A beacon lamp is pointing on, where stronger glows the morn. Since Adam lived, the mighty ones have ever ruled the weak. Since Noah's flood, the fettered slave has seldom dared to speak. 'Tis time a voice was heard, 'tis time a voice was spoken. So in the chain of tyranny, a link or two be broken. A tiny rill will swell a stream, a spark will cause a flame, and one man's burning eloquence has helped to do the same. And he will persevere, and soon that blaze must spread to the corners of the earth, reflecting beams are shed. The few will try to beat it down, but can they stop the flood? Pin up the pinions of the light, or check the will of God? And is it not his will that deeply injured right should overthrow the iron rule and reign instead of might? End of number 5. Extempore Lines. Recorded by Alan Lawley.
The Old Year by Henry Kendall. Read for LibriVox.org by Nemo. The Old Year. It passed like the breath of the night wind away. It fled like a mist at the dawn of the day. It lasted its moment, then backwards was hurled. Another increase to the age of the world. It passed with its shadows, its smiles, and its tears. It passed as a stream to the ocean of years. Years that were coming, were here, and are o'er. The ages departed to visit no more. It passed, but the bark on its billowy track leaves an impression on waters aback. The glow of the gloaming remains on the sky, unwilling to leave us, unwilling to die. It fled, but away and away in its wake there lingers a something that time cannot break. The past and the future are joined by a chain, and memories live that must ever remain. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Tanna by Henry Kendall. Read for LibriVox.org by Alan Lawley. Shades of my father, the hour is approaching. Prepare ye the carver for yonder on high. Make ready the welcome, ye souls of Arakan. The death god of Tanna speaks, yonder must die. No more will he traverse the flame-sheeted mountain to lead forth his brothers to hunting and war. No more will he drink from the time-honored fountain, nor rise in the councils of King Ashar. His voice in the battle, loud thunder resembling, has died like a zephyr o'errunning the plain. His whoop like the tempest through forest trees trembling, shall never strike foeman with terror again. The musker hung up on Cocoa is sleeping, and Ataman's spirits have gathered anigh, to see their destroyer, and wailing and weeping, roll past on the night-breathing winds of the sky. The lines are suspended, the motto is broken, the canoes far away from the water-washed shore. Mourn, mourn, ye hyenas, the word has been spoken, the chieftain can bring ye the weapon no more. Ye cloud-seated visions, ye shades of my fathers, awake from your slumbers, the trumpet blast blow. The moments are flying, the mountain mist gathers, and yonder is leaving his campfire below. The struggles are over, the cords are asunder, ye phantoms hold forward your heavenly light. Speak on the wings of the sky-shaking thunder, and fill him with joy on the path of his flight. Come downwards a space through the fogs till ye meet him, throw open the doors of Arakan awide, and stand on the thresholds, ye shadows shall greet him, the glory of Tanna, the Kingshare's pride. Thank spirits departed, heard I not your voices, faint rolling along on the breath of the gale. Thank spirits departed, Lynda rejoices, ye've answered the mourner, ye've silenced the wail. The midnight is clearing, the death song is ended, the chieftain has gone, but ye've called him away, for he smiled as he listened, obedient descended, the voice in his ear, and the torch on his way. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
The Earth Laments for Day by Henry Kendall. Read for LibriVox.org by Nemo. The Earth laments for day. There's music wafting on the air, the evening winds are sighing among the trees, and yonder stream is mournfully replying, lamenting loud the sunny light that in the west is dying. The moon is rising o'er the hill, her slanting rays are creeping where nature lies profoundly still, in happy, quiet sleeping, and resting on her face, they'll find the earth is wet with weeping. She mourneth for the lovely day, now deep in darkness shaded. She sheds the dewy tear, because of morning's mantle faded. She misses from her breast the garb in which the moon arrayed it. The evening queen will strive in vain to break the spell which bound her. A million stars can never throw departed warmth around her. They all must pass away and leave the earth as they had found her. But why should gentle nature weep that night has overtaken the wearied world that needed sleep, refreshed to reawaken, so richer light might burst around the gloomy shadows breaking? Oh, can she not from yonder sky that gleams above her borrow a single ray, or find a way to check the tear of sorrow? A beam of hope would last her till the dawning of tomorrow. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
The late W. V. Wild, Esquire, by Henry Kendall, read for LibriVox.org, by Lynda Marie Neilson, Vancouver, B.C. Sad faces came round, and I dreamily said, "Though the harp of my country now slumbers, some hand will pass o'er it in love for the dead, and attune it to sorrowful numbers. But the hopes that I cling to are withering things, for the days have gone by with a cloud on their wings, and the touch of a bard is unknown to the strings. Oh, why art thou silent, Australia? The leaves of the autumn are scattering fast, the willows look barren and lonely. But I dream a sad dream of my friend of the past, and this form I can dwell upon only. In the strength of his youth I can see him go by. There is health on the cheek, and a fire in the eye. Oh, who would have thought that such beauty could die? Ah, mourn for the noblest Australia! A strange shadow broods o'er the desolate earth, and the cypresses tremble and quiver. But my heart waxeth dark with the thoughts of the worth that has left us for ever and ever. A dull cloud creepeth close to the moon, and the winter winds pass with a shuddering croon. Oh, why was he snatched from his brothers so soon? Ah, weep for thy lost one, Australia! How weary we grow when we turn to reflect upon what we have seen and believe in, when harping on promises hopelessly wrecked, and the things we have all been deceived in. When a voice that I loved lingers near to me yet, and a kind handsome face which I'll never forget. Can I wake to the present and stifle regret? Can I smother these feelings, Australia? It is useless to grieve o'er the light that has fled, but the harp of my country still slumbers, and I thought that some bard, in his love for the dead, would have thrilled it to sorrowful numbers. Lo, the hopes that I clung to are withering things, for the days have gone by with a cloud on their wings, and my hand is too feeble to strike at the strings. Oh, why art thou silent, Australia? End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Astarte by Henry Kendall, read for LibriVox.org. Across the dripping ridges, oh look, luxurious night, she comes, the bright-haired beauty, my luminous delight, my luminous delight. So hush ye shores you roar, that my soul may sleep forgetting, that love's wild nevermore. Astarte, Syrian sister, your face is wet with tears. I think you know the secret one heart has held for years, one heart has held for years. But hide your hapless love, and my sweet, my Syrian sister, that loves white nevermore. Ah, Helen, hope in heaven, my queen of long ago, I swooned with adoration, but could not tell you so, or dared not tell you so, my radiant queen of yore. You've passed away and left me, that loves white nevermore. Astarte knoweth, darling, of eyes that once did weep, what time-entranced passion hath kissed your lips in sleep, hath kissed your lips in sleep. But now those tears are o'er, gone, my saint, with many a moan, to dead love's wild nevermore. If I am past all crying, what thoughts are maddening me, of you, my darling, dying, upon the lone white sea, upon the lone white sea. Ah, hush your shores you roar, that my soul may sleep forgetting, dead love's wild nevermore. End of poem. This poem is in the public domain.
Australian War Song by Henry Kendall. Read for LibriVox.org by Son of the Exiles. Men have said that ye were sleeping. Hurl, Australians, back the lie. Whet the swords you have in keeping. Forward stand to do or die. Hear ye not across the ocean echoes of the distant fray, sounds of loud and fierce commotion swiftly sweeping on the way? Hearts have woke from sluggish trances, woke to know their native worth. Freedom with her train advances, freedom newly sprung to birth. Despots start from thrones affrighted, tyrants hear the angry tread, where the slaves whose prayers were slighted, marching, draw the sword instead. If the men of other nations dash their fetters to the ground, when the foeman seeks your stations, will you willing slaves be found? You, the sons of hero fathers, sires that bled at Waterloo, know your indignation gathers to your old traditions true. Should the cannon's iron rattle sound between your harbour doors, you will rise to wage the battle in a just and righteous cause. Patriot fires will scorch oppression, should it dare to draw too near, and the tide of bold aggression must be stayed from coming here. Look upon familiar places, mountain, river, hill, and glade. Look upon those beauteous faces, turning up to you for aid. Think ye in the time of danger, when that threatening moment comes, will you let the heartless stranger drive your kindred from their homes? By the prayers which rise above you, when you face him on the shore, by the forms of those that love you, greet him with the rifle's roar. While an arm can wield a sabre, while you yet can lift a hand, strike and teach your hostile neighbour, this is freedom's chosen land. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
The Ivy on the Wall by Henry Kendall. Read for LibriVox.org by Nemo. The Ivy on the Wall. The verdant ivy clings around yon moss-bemantled wall, as if it sought to hide the stones that crumbling soon must fall. That relic of a bygone age, now tottering to decay, has but one friend, the ivy, left, the rest have passed away. The fairy flowers that once did bloom and smile beneath its shade, they lingered till the autumn came, and autumn saw them fade. The emerald leaves that blushed between, the winds away have blown, but yet to cheer the mournful scene, the ivy liveth on. Thus heavenly hope will still survive, when earthly joys have fled, and all the flowery dreams of youth lie withering and dead. When winter comes, it twines itself around the human heart, and like the ivy on the wall, will ne'er from thence depart. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
The Australian Emigrant by Henry Kendall, read for LibriVox.org by Lynda Marie Neilson, Vancouver, BC. How dazzling the sunbeams awoke on the spray, when Australia first rose in the distance away, as welcome to us on the deck of the bark, as the dove to the vision of those in the ark. What fairy-like fancies appeared to the view, as nearer and nearer the haven we drew! What castles were built and rebuilt in the brain, to totter and crumble to nothing again! We had roamed o'er the ocean, had traversed a path where the tempest surrounded and shrieked in its wrath. Alike we had rolled in the hurricane's breath, and slumbered on waters as silent as death, and had watched the day breaking each morn on the main, and had seen it sink down in the billows again, for week after week, till disheartened we thought an age would elapse ere we'd entered the port. How often, while ploughing the watery waste, our thoughts from the future had turned to the past! How often our bosoms have heaved with regret for faces and scenes we could never forget! For we'd seen as the shadows o'ercurtained our minds the cliffs of old England receding behind, and had turned in our tears from the view of the shore, the land of our childhood, to see it no more. But when that red morning awoke from its sleep, to show us this land like a cloud on the deep, and when the warm sunbeams imparted their glow to the heavens above and the ocean below, the hearts had been aching, then revelled with joy, and the pleasure was tasted, exempt from alloy. The souls had been heavy, grew happy and light, and all was forgotten in present delight. 'Tis true, of the hopes that were verdant that day, there is more than half of them withered away. 'Tis true that emotions of tempered regret still live for the country we'll never forget, but yet we are happy, since learning to love the scenes that surround us, the skies are above, we find ourselves bound, as it were by a spell, in the clime we've adopted, contented to dwell. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
To My Brother, Basil E. Kendall by Henry Kendall. Read for LibriVox.org by Ruben Whitter. Tonight the sea sends up a gulf-like sound, and ancient rhymes are ringing in my head. The many lilts of song we sang and said, my friend and brother, when we journeyed round our haunts at Wollongong, the classic ground, for me at least, a lingua deeply read and steeped in beauty. Oft entranced I tread those shining shores, and hear your work of fame with thought-flushed face, and heart so well assured, beholding through the woodland's bright distress The moon half pillaged of her loveliness. Of this wild dreamer, had you but endured a dubious start, you might have won a name with brighter base than I can ever claim. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
The Waterfall by Henry Kendall. Read for LibriVox.org by Nemo. The Waterfall. The song of the water, doomed ever to roam, a beautiful exile afar from its home. The cliffs on the mountain, the grand and the grey, they took the bright creature and hurled it away. I heard the wild downfall, and knew it must spill a passionate heart out all over the hill. Oh, was it a daughter of sorrow and sin, that they threw it so madly down into the Lynn? And listen, my sister, for this is the song the waterfall taught me the ridges among. Oh, where are the shadows so cool and so sweet, and the rocks, saith the water, with the moss on their feet? Oh, where are my playmates, the wind and the flowers, the golden and purple of honey sweet bowers? Mine eyes have been blinded because of the sun, and moaning I listlessly run. These hills are so flinty. Ah, tell me, dark earth, what valley leads back to the place of my birth? What valley leads up to the haunts where a child of the caverns I sported, the free and the wild? There lift me, it crieth, I faint from the heat, with a sob for the shadows so cool and so sweet. Ye rocks that look over with never a tear, I yearn for one half of the wasted love here. My sister so wistful, you know I believe, like a child for the mountains this water doth grieve. Ah, you with the blue eyes and golden brown hair, come closer and truly declare. Supposing a darling once happened to sin, in a passionate space, would you carry her in? If your fathers and mothers, the grand and the grey, had taken the weak one and hurled her away? End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. The Song of Arda by Henry Kendall. Read for LibriVox.org by Nemo. The Song of Arda. From Anatanum. Low is the lute, my love, beneath the call of storm. I hear a melancholy wind, the memorably mournful wind of yore, which is the very brother of the one that wanders, like a hermit, by the mound of death, in lone Anatanum. A song was shaped for this, what time we heard outside the gentle falling of the faded leaf in quiet noons. A song whose theme doth turn on gaps of ruin, and the gay green cliffs beneath the summits, haunted by the moon. Yea, much it travels to the dens of dole, and in the midst of the strange rhyme, my lords, our desolation like a phantom sits, with wasted cheeks and eyes that cannot weep, and fastened lips cramped up in marvelous pain. A song in whose voice is the voice of the foam, and the rhyme of the wintering wave, and the tongue of the things that eternally roam in forest and fell or in cave. But mostly 'tis like to the wind without home, in the glen of a desolate grave, of a deep and desolate grave. The torrent flies over the thunderstruck cliff with many and many a call. The leaves are swept down, and a dolorous drift is hurried away with a fall. But mostly 'tis like the wind without home, in the glen of a desolate grave, of a deep and desolate grave. Whoever goes thither by night or by day must mutter, O Father, to thee, For the shadows that startle, the sounds that waylay, are heavy to hear and to see, and a step and a moan and a whisper for aye have made it a sorrow to be, a sorrow of sorrows to be. Oh, cover your faces and shudder and turn and hide in the dark of your hair, nor look to the glen and the mountains to learn of the mystery mouldering there, but rather sit low in the ashes and urn dead hopes in your mighty despair, in the depths of your mighty despair. End a poem. This recording is in the public domain.
The Helmsman by Henry Kendall, read for LibriVox.org by Larry Wilson. Like one who meets a staggering blow, the stout old ship doth reel, and waters vast go seething past, but will it last this fearful blast, on straining shroud and groaning mast, O sailor at the wheel? His face is smitten with the wind, his cheeks are chilled with rain, and you were right, his hair is white, but eyes are calm and heart is light. He does not fear the strife tonight, he knows the roaring main. Ho, sailor, will tomorrow bring the hours of pleasant rest? And answer low, I do not know. The thunders grow and far winds blow, but storms may come and storms may go. Our God, he judgeth best. Now you are right, brave mariner, but we are not like you. We, used to shore, our fates deplore, and fear the more when waters roar. So few amongst us look before, or stop to think that heaven is o'er. Ah, what you say is true. And those who go abroad in ships, who seldom see the land, but sail and stray so far away, should trust and pray, for are not they, when darkness blinds them on their way, all guided by God's hand? But you are wrinkled and gray and worn. 'Tis time you dwelt in peace. Your prime is past. We fail so fast. You may not last through every blast, and oh, 'tis fearful to be cast amongst the smothering seas. Is there no absent face to love, that you must live alone? If faith did fade, if friends betrayed, and turned and stayed resolves you've made, ah, still, 'tis pleasant to be laid where you at least are known. The answer slides betwixt our words. The season shines and glooms on ship and strand, on sea and land, but life must go and time is spanned, as well you know when out you stand with death amongst the tombs. It matters not to one so old who mourns when fate comes round, and one may sleep down in the deep as well as those beneath the heap that 50 storms years will sweep and trample to the ground. Your speech is wise, brave mariner, and we would let you be. You speak with truth and strive to sooth, but oh, the wrecks of love and truth, what say you to our tears for youth and beauty drowned at sea? Ho, talk not of beauty lost. Since first these decks I trod, the hopeless stare on faces fair, the streaming, bare, dishevelled hair, the wild despair, the sinking, where, oh where, oh where, my God? End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
To Miss Anne Hopkins by Henry Kendall, read for LibriVox.org by Ruben Whitter. Beneath the shelter of the bush, in undisturbed repose, unruffled by the kiss of breeze, there lurks a smiling rose. Beneath thine outer beauty gleams, in holy light enshrined, a symbol of the blooming flower, a pure, unspotted mind. The lovely tint that crowns the hill when westward sinks the sun, the milder dazzle in the stream that evening sits upon, the morning blushes mantling over the face of land and sea, they all recall to mind the charms that are combined in thee. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Foreshadowings by Henry Kendall. Read for LibriVox.org by Larry Wilson. 15 miles, and then the harbor. Here we cannot choose but stand, faces thrust towards the daybreak, listening for our native land. Close reefed topsails shuddering over, straining down the groaning mast. For a tempest cleaves the darkness, hissing, howling, shrieking past. Lo, the air is flecked with storm birds, and their melancholy wail lends a tone of deeper pathos to the melancholy gale. Whilst away they wheel to leeward, leaving in their rapid flight wind and water grappling wildly through the watches of the night. Yesterday we both were happy, but my soul is filled with change, and I'm sad, my gallant comrade, with foreshadowings vague and strange. Dear old place, are we so near you? Like to one that speaks in sleep, I'm talking, thinking wildly o'er this moaning, maddened deep. Much it makes me marvel, brother, that such thoughts should linger nigh, now we know what shore is hidden somewhere in that misty sky. Oh, I even fear to see it, and I've never felt so low since we turned our faces from it 7 weary years ago. Have you faith at all in omens? Fits of passion I have known, when it seemed in crowded towns as if I walked the earth alone. And amongst my comrades often, o'er the lucent laughing sea, I have felt like one that drifteth on a dark and dangerous lee. As a man who, crossing waters underneath a moony night, knows there will be gloomy weather if a cloud track bounds the light. So I hold, when life is splendid, that our hopes are new and warm, we can sometimes, looking forward, see the shade and feel the storm. When you called me, I was dreaming that this thunder raged no more, and we travelled both together on a calm, delightful shore. That we went along rejoicing, for I thought I heard you say, "Now we soon shall see them, brother, now our fears have passed away." Pleasant were those deep green wild woods, and we hurried like a breeze, till I saw a distant opening through the porches of the trees, and our village faintly gleaming past the forest and the stream, but we wandered sadly through it with the spirit of my dream. Why was our delight so fickle? Was it well while there to mourn? When the loved, the loving, crowded, came to welcome our return? In my vision, once so glorious, did we find that aught was changed, or that one, whom we remembered, was forgotten or estranged? Through a mist of many voices, listening for sweet accents fled, heard we hints of lost affections, or of gentle faces dead? No, but on the quiet dreamscape came a darkness like a pall, and a ghastly shadow, brother, fell and rested over all. Talking thus, my friend, I fronted, and in trustful tones he spake: "I have long been waiting, watching here to see the morning break. Now behold the bright fulfilment. Did my spirit yearn in vain? And amidst this holy splendor can a moody heart remain? Let them pass, those wayward fancies. Waking thoughts return with sleep, and they mingle strangely sometimes while we lie in slumber deep. But believe me, dreams are nothing. If unto his creatures weak God should whisper of the future, not in riddles will he speak." Since he answered, I have rested, for his brave words fell like balm, and we reached the land in daylight, and the tempest died in calm. Though the sounds of gusty fragments of a faint and broken breeze still went gliding with the runnels gurgling adown the spangled leas. So we turned and travelled onward till we rested at a place where a vision fell about us, sunned with many a lovely face. Then we heard low silvery voices, and knelt upon the shore, knelt and whispered, "God, I thank thee, I will wander nevermore." End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Sonnets on the Discovery of Botany Bay by Captain Cook by Henry Kendall. Read for LibriVox.org by Lynda Neilson, Vancouver, BC. The first attempt to reach the shore. Where is the painter who shall paint for you my Austral brothers with a pencil steeped in hues of truth, the weather-smitten crew who gazed on unknown shores, a thoughtful few, what time the heart of their great leader leaped, till he was faint with pain of longing, new, and wondrous sights on each and every hand, like strange supernal visions, grew and grew, until the rocks and trees, and sea and sand, danced mildly in the tear-bewildered view, and from the surf a fierce, fantastic band of startled wild men to the hills withdrew, with yells of fear, "Who'll paint thy face, O cook?" turned seaward, after many a wistful look. The second attempt, opposed by two of the natives. There were but two, and we were 40, yet, the captain wrote, that dauntless couple throve, and faced our wilding faces, and I said, "Lie to a while, I did not choose to let a strife go on of little worth to us, and so unequal, but the dying tread of flying kinsmen moved them not, for wet with surf and wild with streaks of white and black, the pair remained. O stout Caractacus, 'twas thus you stood where Caesar's legions strove to beat their few, fantastic foemen back, your patriots with their savage stripes of red, to drench the stormy cliff and moaning cove with faithful blood, as pure as any ever shed. The spot where Cook landed. Chaotic crags are huddled east and west, dark heavy crags against a straitened sea, that cometh like a troubled soul in quest of voiceless rest where never dwelleth rest, with noise like thunder everlasting. But here, behold a silent space of sand. O pilgrim, halt! It even seems to be asleep in other years. How still, how grand! How awful in its wild solemnity! This is the spot on which the chief did land, and there, perchance, he stood what time a band of yelling strangers scoured the savage lea. Dear friend, with thoughtful eyes look slowly round. By all the sacred past, 'tis sacred ground. Sutherland's grave. 'Tis holy ground! The silent silver lights, and darks undreamed of, falling year by year upon his sleep in soft Australian nights, are joys enough for him who lieth here, so sanctified with rest. We need not rear the storied monument o'er such a spot. That soul, the first for whom the Christian tear was shed on Austral soil, hath heritage most ample. Let the ages wane with age. The grass which clothes this grave shall wither not. See yonder quiet lily, have the blights of many winters left it on a faded tomb. Footnote: a wild lily grows on the spot supposed to be Sutherland's grave. End of footnote. O peace! Its fellows glad with green delights shall gather round it deep, eternal bloom. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. To Henry Halloran by Henry Kendall. Read for LibriVox.org by Lynda Neilson, Vancouver, BC. You know I left my forest home full loath, and those weird ways I knew so well and long, dishevelled with their sloping sidelong growth of twisted thorn and cur a jong. It seems to me, my friend, and this wild thought of all wild thoughts doth chiefly make me bleed, that in those hills and valleys wonder fraught, I loved and lost a noble creed. A splendid creed, but let me even turn, and hide myself from what I've seen, and try to fathom certain truths you know, and learn the beauty shining in your sky. Remembering you in ardent autumn nights, and Stenhouse near you, like a fine stray guest of other days, with all his lore of lights, so manifold and manifest. Then hold me firm, I cannot choose but long for that which lies and burns beyond my reach, suggested in your steadfast, subtle song, and his most marvelous speech. For now my soul goes drifting back again, drifting, drifting, like the silent snow, while scattering sheddings in a fall of rain, revive the dear lost long ago. The time I, loitering by untrodden friends, intent on low-hanging lustrous skies, heard mellowed psalms from sounding southern glens, aroma dear to dreaming eyes, and caught seductive tokens of a voice, half maddened with the dim, delirious themes of perfect love, and the immortal choice of starry faces, astral dreams. That was yours, and if you sometimes find an alien darkness on the front of things, sing none the less for life, nor fall behind, like me with trailing, tired wings. Yea, though the heavy earth wears sackcloth now, because she hath the great prophetic grief, which makes me set my face one way and bow, and falter for a far belief. Be faithful yet for all, my brave, bright peer, in that rare light you hold so true and good, and find me something clearer than the clear, white spaces of infinitude. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Lost in the Flood by Henry Kendall, read for LibriVox.org by Larry Wilson. When God drave the ruthless waters from our cornfields to the sea, came she where our wives and daughters sobbed their thanks on bended knee. Hidden faces, there ye found her, mute as death, and staring wild at the shadow waxing round her, like the presence of her child, of her drenched and drowning child. Dark thoughts live where tears won't gather. Who can tell us what she felt? It was human, O my Father, if she blamed thee while she knelt. Ever as a benediction fell like balm on all and each, rose a young face whose affliction choked and stayed the founts of speech, stayed and shut the founts of speech. Often doth she sit and ponder over gleams of happy hair, how her white hands used to wander like a flood of moonlight there. Lord, our Lord, thou knowest her weakness, give her faith that she may pray, and the subtle strength of meekness, lest she falter by the way, falter, fainting by the way. Darling, saith she, wildly moaning where the grass-grown silence lies, is there rest from sobs and groaning, rest with you beyond the skies? Child of mine, so far above me, late it waxeth, dark and late, will the love with which I love thee lift me where you sit and wait? Darling, where you sit and wait. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
(1864) by Henry Kendall. Read for LibriVox.org by Ken Davis. Derby, England. I hear no footfall beating through the dark. A lonely gust is loitering at the pane. There's no sound within these forests stark, beyond a splash or two of sullen rain. But you are with us, and our patient land is filled with long-expected change at last, though we have scarce the heart to lift a hand of welcome after all the yearning past. Marvel not. The days and nights are long and cold and dull and dashed with many tears, and lately there hath been a doleful song of Mene, Mene in our restless ears. Indeed, we've said, the royal son of time, whose feet will shortly cross our threshold floor, may lead us to those outer heights sublime our sires have sold their lives to see before. We'll follow him, beyond the waves and wrecks of years fulfilled. Some fine results must lie. We'll pass the last of all wild things that vex the pale, sad face of our humanity. But now our fainting feet are loath to stray from trodden paths. Our eyes, with pain, are blind. We've lost fair treasures by the weary way. We cry like children to be left behind. Our human speech is dim, yet latest born of God's eternity, there came to me in saddened streets last week from lips forlorn a sound more solemn than the sleepless sea. Oh, Rachel, Rachel, we've heard the cries in Rama, stranger are our darling dead, and seen our mothers with the heavy eyes who would not hearken to be comforted. Then lead us gently. It must come to pass that some of us shall halt and faint and fall, for we are looking through a darkened glass, and heaven seems far, and faith grows cold and pale. I know for one I need a subtle strength. I have not yet to hold me from the fall. What time I cry to God within the length of weary hours, my face against the wall. My morning brothers, in the long still nights when sleep is wilful and the lone moon shines, bethink you of the silent silver lights and darks with death amongst the moody pines. Then, though you cannot shut a stricken face away from you, this hope will come about, that Christ hath sent, again throughout the place, some sign of love to worst and weakened out. So you may find, in every afterthought, a peace beyond your best expression, dear, and haply hearken to the voice which wrought such strength in Peter on the seas of fear. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. Two by Henry Kendall. Read for LibriVox.org by Ken Davis. Derby, England. Often do I wait and watch, and look up straining through the reel, with longing eyes, my friend, to catch faint glimpses of your white ideal. I know she loved to rest her feet by slumberous seas and hidden strand, but mostly hints of her I meet on moony spots of mountain land. I've never reached her shining place, and only cross at times a gleam, as one might pass a fleeting face, just on the outside of a dream. But you may climb, her happy choice. She knows your step, the maiden true, and never, when she hears your voice, she turns and sits and waits for you. How sweet to rest on breezy crest with such a love! What time the morn looks from his halls of rosy rest across green miles of gleaming corn. How sweet to find a leafy nook when bees are out and day burns mute, where you may hear a passioned brook play past you like a mellow flute, or, turning from the sunken sun, on fields of dim delight to lie, to close your eyes and muse upon the twilight's strange divinity. Or through the night's mysterious noon, while sound lies hushed among the trees, to sit and watch a mirrored moon float over silver sleeping seas. Oh, vain regret, why should I stay to think and dream of joys unknown? You walk with her from day to day. I faint, afar off and alone. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. At Long Bay by Henry Kendall. Read for LibriVox.org by Ken Davies. Derby, England. 5 years ago. You cannot choose but know the face of change, though July sleeps and spring renews the gloss in gorge and range. 5 years ago. I hardly know how they have slipped away, since here we watched at ebb and flow the waters of the bay, and saw with eyes of little faith from cumbered summits fade the rainbow and the rainbow wraith, that shadow of a shade. For love and youth were vexed with doubt, like ships on driving seas, and in those days the heart gave out unthankful similes. But let it be. I've often said, his lot was hardly cast, who never turned a happy head to an unhappy past, who never turned a face of light to cares beyond recall. He only fares in sorer plight, who hath no past at all. So take my faith, and let it stand between us for a sign that 5 bright years have known the land since yonder tumbled line. Of Seacliff took our troubled talk, the words at random thrown, and echo lived about this walk of gap and slimy stone. Here first we learned the love which leaves no lack or loss behind, the dark sweet love which woos the eaves and haunts the morning wind, and roves with runnels in the dell and houses by the wave, what time the storm hath struck the fell and terror fills the cave. A love you know that lives and lies for moments past control, and mellows through the poet's eyes and sweetens in his soul. Here first we faced a briny breeze, what time the middle gale went shrilling over whitened seas with flying towers of sail. And here we heard the plover's call, as shattered pauses came, when heaven showed a fiery wall with sheets of wasted flame. Here grebe and gull and heavy glede passed eastward far away, the while the wind with slackened speed drooped with the dying day. And here our friendship, like a tree, perennial, grew and grew, till you were glad to live for me, and I to live for you. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Forever by Henry Kendall. Read for LibriVox.org by Nemo. Forever. Out of the body forever, wearily sobbing, oh whither? A soul that hath wasted its chances floats on the limitless ether. Lost in dim, horrible blackness, drifting like wind on a sea, untraversed and vacant and moaning, nor shallow nor shore on the lee. Helpless, unfriended, forsaken, haunted and tracked by the past, with fragments of pitiless voices and desolate faces aghast. One saith, it is well that he goeth, naked and fainting with cold, who worshipped his sweet-smelling garments, arrayed with the cunning of old. Hark, how he crieth, my brothers, with pain for the glittering things he saw on the shoulders of rulers, and the might in the mouths of the kings. This soul hath been one of the idlers, who wait with still hands when they lack for fortune, like Joseph, to throw them the cup thrust in Benjamin's sack. Now, had he been faithful in striving, and warring with wrong to the sword, he must have passed over these spaces, caught up in the arms of the Lord. A second. Lo, passion was wilful, and, glad with voluptuous sighs, he held it luxurious trouble to ache for luxurious eyes. She bound him, the woman resplendent, she withered his strength with her stare, and faith hath been twisted and strangled with folds of her luminous hair. Was it well, O you wandering wailer, abandoned in terrible space, to halt on the highway to heaven because of a glittering face? And another, behold, he was careful, he faltered to think of his youth, dejected and weary and footsore, alone on the dim road to truth. If the way had been shorter and greener and brighter, he might have been brave, but the goal was too far and he fainted, like Peter with Christ on the wave. Beyond the wild haunts of the mockers, far in the distance and grey, floateth that sorrowful spirit, away and away and away. Pale phantoms fly past it like shadows, dim eyes that are blinded with tears, old faces all white with affliction, the ghost of the wasted dead years. Soul that hath ruined us, shiver, and moan when you know us, they cry. Behold, I was part of thy substance, and I, saith another, and I. Drifting from starless abysses into the ether sublime, where is no upward nor downward, nor region nor record of time. Out of the body forever, no refuge, no succor nor stay, floated that sorrowful spirit, away and away and away. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Sonnets by Henry Kendall, read for LibriVox.org by Larry Wilson. To N. D. Stenhouse, Esquire. Dark days have passed, but you who taught me then to look upon the world with trustful eyes are not forgotten. Quick to sympathize with noble thoughts, I've dreamt of moments when your low voice filled with strains of fairer skies, stray breaths of Grecian song that went and came, like floating fragrance from some quiet glen in those far hills which shine with classic fame, of passioned nymphs and grand-browed godlike men. I sometimes fear my heart hath lost the same sweet sense of harmony, but this I know, that beauty waits on you where'er you go, because she loveth childlike faith. Her bowers are rich for it with glad perennial flowers. Elizabeth Barrett Browning. A lofty type of all her sex, I ween, my English brothers, though your wayward race now slight the soul that never wore a screen, and loved too well to keep her noble place. Ah, bravest woman that our world hath seen, a light in spaces wild and tempest tossed, in every verse of thine behold we trace the full reflection of an earnest face, and hear the scrawling of an eager pen. O sisters, knowing that you've loved and lost, I ask where shall we find its like, and when? That dear heart with its passion sorrow crossed, and pathos rippling like a brook in June amongst the roses of a windless noon. Sir Walter Scott. The bard of ancient lore, like one forlorn, he turned enamored to the silent past, and searching down its mazes gray and vast, as you might find the blossom by the thorn, he found fair things in barren places, cast and brought them up into the light of morn. Lo, truth, resplendent as a tropic dawn, shines always through his wondrous pictures. Hence the many quick emotions which are born of an imagination so intense. The charger's hoofs come tearing up the sward, the claymores rattle in the restless sheath. You close his page and almost look abroad for highland glens and windy leagues of heath. Let me here endeavour to draw the fair distinctions between the great writers, or some of the great writers, of Scott's day. Borrowing at the same time a later name, I shall start with that strange figure, Percy Bysshe Shelley. He was too subjective to be merely a descriptive poet, too metaphysical to be vague, and too imaginative to be didactic. As Scott was the most dramatic, Wordsworth the most profound, Byron the most passionate, so Shelley was the most spiritual writer of his time. Scott's poetry was the result of vivid emotion, Wordsworth's of quiet observation, Byron's of passion, and Shelley's of passion and reflection. Scott races like a torrent, Byron rolls like a sea, Wordsworth ripples into a lake, Tennyson flows like a river, and Shelley gushes like a fountain. As Tennyson is the most harmonious, so Shelley is the most musical of modern bards. I fear to touch upon that grand old man, Coleridge. He appears to me so utterly apart from his contemporaries. He stands like Teneriffe, alone. Can I liken him to a magnificent, thunder-scorched crag, with its summits eternally veiled in vapour? H.K. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
The Bereaved One by Henry Kendall. Read for LibriVox.org by Nemo. The Bereaved One. She sleeps, and I see through a shadowy haze where the hopes of the past and the dreams that I cherished in the sunlight of brighter and happier days, as the mist of the morning, have faded and perished. She sleeps and will waken to bless me no more. Her life has died out like the gleam on the river, and the bliss that illumined my bosom of yore has fled from its dwelling for ever and ever. I had thought in this life not to travel alone. I had hoped for a mate in my joys and my sorrow. But the face of my idol is colder than stone, and my path will be lonely without her tomorrow. I was hoping to bask in the light of her smile, when fortune and fame with her laurels had crowned me. But the fire in her eyes has been dying the while, and the thorns of affliction are planted around me. There are those that may vent all their grief in their tears, and weep till the past is away in the distance. But this wreck of the dream of my sunshiny years will hang like a cloud o'er the rest of existence. In the depth of my soul she shall ever remain. My thoughts, like the angels, shall hover about her. For our hearts have been reft and divided in pain, and what is this world to be left in without her? End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Dungog by Henry Kendall. Read for LibriVox.org by Larry Wilson. Here pent about by office walls and barren eyes all day, 'tis sweet to think of waterfalls 200 miles away. I would not ask you, friends, to brook an old, old truth from me, if I could shut a poet's book which haunts me like the sea. He saith to me, this poet saith, so many things of light, that I have found a fourfold faith, and gained a twofold sight. He telleth me, this poet tells, how much of God is seen amongst the deep mossed English dells and miles of gleaming green. From many a black Gethsemane he leads my bleeding feet to where I hear the morning sea round shining spaces beat, to where I feel the wind which brings a sound of running creeks, and blows those dark unpleasant things, the sorrows, from my cheeks. I'll shut mine eyes, my poet choice, and spend the day with thee. I'll dream thou art a fountain voice which God hath sent to me. And far beyond these office walls my thoughts shall even stray, and watch the wilful waterfalls 200 miles away. For if I know not of thy deeds in darling Kentish downs, I've seen the deep wild Dungog fells, and hate the heart of towns. Then ho! for beaming bank and brake, far folded hills among where Williams, like a silver snake draws winding lengths along. And ho, for stormy mountain cones, where headlong winter leaps, what time the gloomy swamp oak groans, and weeps and wails and weeps. There, friends, are spots of sleepy green, where one may hear afar, o'er 15 leagues of waste, I ween, a moaning harbour bar. The sea that breaks and beats and shakes, the caverns howling loud, beyond the midnight mile lakes, and half awakened Stroud. There, through the fretful autumn days, beneath a cloudy sun, comes rolling down rain-rutted ways the wind Euroclydon, while rattles over riven rocks the thunder, harsh and dry, and blustering gum and brooding box are threshing at the sky. And then the gloom doth vex the night with crude unshapely forms, which hold throughout the yelling night a fellowship with storms. But here are shady tufts and turns where sumptuous summer lies, by reaches brave with flags and ferns, with large luxuriant eyes. And here another getteth ease, our spring so rarely seen, who shows us in the cedar trees a glimpse of golden green. What time the flapping bats have trooped away like ghosts to graves, and darker growths than night are cooped in silent hillside caves. Ah, Dungog, dream of darling days, 'tis better thou shouldst be a far-off thing to love and praise, a boon from heaven to me. For let me say that when I look with wearied eyes on men, I think of one unchanging nook, and find my faith again. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Dennehy's Lament by Henry Kendall, read for LibriVox.org by Lynda Marie Neilson, Vancouver, BC. Spirit of loveliness, heart of my heart, flying so far from me, heart of my heart, above the eastern hill, I know the red leaves thrill, but thou art distant still, heart of my heart. Sinning, I've searched for thee, heart of my heart. Sinning, I've dreamt of thee, heart of my heart. I know no end nor gain amongst the paths of pain. I follow thee in vain, heart of my heart. Much have I lost for thee, heart of my heart, not counting the cost for thee, heart of my heart. Through all this year of years thy form as mist appears, so blind am I with tears, heart of my heart. Mighty and mournful now, heart of my heart, cometh the shadow face, heart of my heart. The friends I've left for thee, their sad eyes trouble me. I cannot bear to be, heart of my heart. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. Dennehy's Dream by Henry Kendall, read for LibriVox.org by Lynda Marie Neilson, Vancouver, BC. Just when the western light flickered out dim, flushing the mountain side, summit and rim, a last low lingering gleam fell on a yellow stream, and then there came a dream, shining to him. Splendors miraculous, mixed with his pain, all like a vision of radiance and rain. He faced the sea, the skies, old star-like thoughts did rise, but tears were in his eyes, stifled in vain. Infinite tokens of sorrows set free came in the dreaming wind, far from the sea. Past years about him trooped, fair phantoms round him stooped, sweet faces o'er him drooped, sad as could be. This is our brother now, sisters deplore, man without purpose, like ship without shore. He tracks false fire, one said, but weep you, he must tread whereto he may be led, lost evermore. Look, said another, summit and slope, burn in the mountain land, basement and cope, till daylight, dying dim, faints on the world's red rim, will tint this dream for him, even with hope. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Cui Bono by Henry Kendall. Read for LibriVox.org by Nemo. Cui Bono. A clamor by day and a whisper by night, and the summer comes with the shining noons, with the ripple of leaves and the passionate light of the falling suns and the rising moons. And the ripple of leaves and the purple and red die for the grapes and the gleam of the wheat, and then you may pause with the splendors or tread on the yellows of autumn with lingering feet. You may halt with a face to a flying sea, or stand like a gloom in the gloom of things, when the moon drops down and the desolate lea is troubled with thunder and desolate wings. But alas for the grey of the wintering eves, and the pondering storms and the ruin of rains, and alas for the spring like a flame in the leaves, and the green of the woods and the gold of the lanes. For seeing all pathos is mixed with our past, and knowing all sadness of storm and of surge is salt with our tears for the faith that was cast away like a weed or a bottomless verge. I am lost for these tokens and wearied of ways, wedded with ways that are waning amain, like those that are filled with a trouble that slays, having drunk of their life to the lees that are pain. And yet I would write to you, I who have turned away with a bitter disguise in the eyes, and bitten the lips that have trembled and burned, alone for you, darling, and breaking with sighs. Because I have touched with my fingers a dress that was beauty's, because that the breath of thy mouth is sweetness that lingers, because of each tress showered down on thy shoulders, because of the drouth that came in thy absence, because of the lights and the passion that grew to a level with thee. Is it well that our lives have been filled with the nights and the days which have made it a sorrow to be? Yea, thus having tasted all love with thy lips, and having the warmth of thy hand in mine own, is it well that we wander like parallel ships, with the silence between us, aloof and alone? With my face to the wall shall I sleep and forget the shadow, the sweet sense of slumber denies, if even I marvel at kindness and fret, and start while the tears are all wet in mine eyes? Oh, darling of mine, standing here with the past, trampled under our feet in the bitterest ways, is this speech like a ghost that it keeps us aghast on the track of the thorns and in alien days? When I know of you, love, how you break with our pain, and sob for the sorrow of sorrowful dreams, like a stranger who stands in the wind and the rain, and watches and wails by impassable streams, like a stranger who droops on a brink and deplores, with famishing hands and frost in the feet, for the laughter alive on the opposite shores, with the fervor of fire and the wind of the wheat. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
In Hyde Park by Henry Kendall. Read for LibriVox.org by Diana Schmidt. This and the next poem were written for Prince Alfred's Wreath, published in Sydney in 1868. While in Sydney, the prince was shot by a fanatic and slightly injured. They come from the highways of labor, From labor and leisure they come, but not to the sound of the tabor, and not to the beating of drum. By thousands the people assemble, with faces of shadow and flame, and spirits that sicken and tremble because of their sorrow and shame. Their voice is the voice of a nation, but lo, it is muffled and mute, for the sword of a strong tribulation hath stricken their peace to the root. The beautiful tokens of pity have utterly fled from their eyes, for the demon who darkened the city is cursed in the breaking of sighs. Their thoughts are as one, and together they band in their terrible ire, like legions of wind in fierce weather, whose footsteps are thunder and fire. But forever, like springs of sweet water that sings in the grass-hidden leas, as soft as the voice of a daughter, there cometh a whisper from these. There cometh from shame and dejection, from wrath and the blackness thereof, a word at whose heart is affection, with a sighing whose meaning is love. In the land of distress and of danger, with their foreheads in sackcloth and dust, they weep for the wounds of the stranger, and mourn o'er the ashes of trust. They weep for the prince and the mother, whose years have been smitten of grief, for the son and the lord and the brother, and the widow, the queen, and the chief. But he, having moved like a splendor amongst them in happier days, with a grace that is manly and tender, and the kindness that passes all praise, will think, in the sickness and shadow, of greetings in forest and grove, and welcome in city and meadow, nor couple this sin with their love. For the sake of the touching devotion that sobs through the depths of their woe, this son of the kings of the ocean, as he came to them, trusting will go. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. Australia Vindex by Henry Kendall. Read for LibriVox.org by Diana Schmidt. Who cometh from fields of the south, with raiment of weeping and woe, and a cry of the heart in her mouth, and a step that is muffled and slow. Her paths are the paths of the sun, her house is a beautiful light, but she boweth her head, and is one with the daughters of dolour and night. She is fairer than flowers of love, she is fiercer than wind-driven flame, and God from his thunders above hath smitten the soul of her shame. She saith to the bloody one cursed, with the fever of evil she saith, My sorrow shall strangle thee first, with an agony wilder than death. My sorrow shall hack at thy life, thou shalt wrestle with wraiths of thy sin, and sleep on a pillow of strife with demons without and within. She whispers, He came to the land, a lord and a lover of me, a son of the waves with a hand as fearless and frank as the sea. On the shores of the stranger he stood, with the sweetness of youth on his face, till there started a fiend from the wood, who stabbed at the peace of the place. Because of the dastardly thing thou hast done in the sight of the day, all horrors that sicken and sting shall make thee for ever their prey. Because of the beautiful trust, destroyed by a devil like thee, thy bed shall be low in the dust, and my heel as a shekel shall be. Because, and she mutters it deep, who curseth the coward in chains, thou hast stricken and murdered our sleep, thy sleep shall be perished with pains. Thy sleep shall be broken and sharp, and filled with fierce spasms and dreams, and shadows shall haunt thee and harp on hellish and horrible themes. I will set my right hand on thy neck, and my foot on thy body, nor bate, till thy name shall become as a wreck, and a byword for hisses and hate. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Ned the Larrikin by Henry Kendall. Read for LibriVox.org by Lynda Neilson, Vancouver, BC. A song that is bitter with grief, a ballad as pale as the light that comes with the fall of the leaf, I sing to the shadows tonight. The laugh on the lyrical lips is sadder than laughter of ghosts, chained back in the pits of eclipse by wailing unnameable coasts. I gather this wreath at the close of day that was dripping with dew. The blossom you take for a rose was plucked from the branch of a yew. The flower you fancy is sweet has black in the place of red, for this is a song of the street, the ballad of Larrikin Ned. He stands at the door of the sink that gapes like a fissure of death, the face of him fiery with drink, the flame of its fume in his breath. He thrives in the sickening scenes that the devil has under his ban, a rascal not out of his teens, with the voice of a vicious old man. A blossom of blackness indeed, of Satan a sinister fruit, far better the centipede's seed, the spawn of the adder or newt. Than terror of talon or fang, this imp of the alleys is worse. His speech is a poisonous slang, his phrases are colored with curse. The prison, the shackles and chain, are nothing to him and his type. He sings in the shadow of pain, and laughs at the impotent stripe. There under the walls of the gaols, the half of his life has been passed. He was born in the bosom of Baal, he will go to the gallows at last. No angel in paradise kneels for him at the feet of the Lord. A nemesis follows his heels in the flame of a sinister sword. The sins of his fathers have brought this bitterness into his days. His life is accounted as naught. His soul is a brand for the blaze. Did ever his countenance change? Did ever a moment supreme illume his face with a strange, ineffably beautiful dream? Before he was caught in the breach, in the pits of iniquity grim, did ever the deity reach the hand of a father to him? Behold, it is folly to say the evil was born in the blood. The rose that is cankered today was once an immaculate bud. There might have been blossom and fruit, a harvest exceedingly fair, instead of the venomous root, and flowers that startle and scare. The burden is theirs who, watching this garden about, assisted the thistle and tares, and stamped the divinity out. A growth like the Larrikin Ned, a brutal, unqualified clod, is what ye are helping who tread on the necks of the prophets of God. No more than a damnable weed, ye water and foster, ye fools, whose aim is to banish indeed the beautiful Christ from the schools. The merciful, wonderful light of the seraph religion behold, these evil ones shut from the sight of the children who weep in the cold. But verily trouble shall fall on such, and their portion shall be a harvest of hyssop and gall, and sorrow as wild as the sea. For the rose of a radiant star is over the hills of the east, and the fathers are heartened for war, the prophet, the saint, and the priest. For a spirit of deity makes the holy hierophant strong, and a morning of majesty breaks, and blossoms in color and song. Yea, now, by the altars august, the elders are shining supreme, and brittle and barren as dust is the spiritless secular dream. Its life as a vapor shall end, as a fog in the fall of the year. For the Lord is a father and a friend, and the day of his coming is near. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. In Memoriam, Nicol Drysdale Stenhouse by Henry Kendall. Read for LibriVox.org by Lynda Marie Neilson, Vancouver, BC. Shall he, on whom the fair Lord Delphisius turned gracious eyes and countenance of shine, be left to lie without a wreath from us, to sleep without a flower upon his shrine? Shall he, the son of that resplendent muse, who gleams, high priestess of sweet scholarship, still slumber on, and every bard refuse to touch a harp or move a tuneful lip? No, let us speak, though feeble be our speech, and let us sing, though faltering be our strain, and haply echoes of the song may reach, and please the soul we cannot see again. We sing the beautiful, the radiant life, that shone amongst us like the quiet moon, a fine exception in this sphere of strife, whose time went by us like a hallowed tune. You, tomb, whereon the moonlit grasses sigh, hides from our view the shell of one whose days were set throughout to that grand harmony, which fills all minor spirits with amaze. This was the man whose dear, lost face appears to rise betimes like some sweet evening dream, and holy memories of faultless years, and touching hours of quietness supreme. He, having learned in full the golden rule, which guides great lives, stood fairly by the same, unruffled as the oriental pool, before the bright, disturbing angel came. In learning's halls he walked, a leading lord. He trod the sacred temple's inner floors, but kindness beamed in every look and word he gave the humblest Levite at the doors. When scholars poor and bowed beneath the ban, which clings as fire, were like to faint and fall, this was the gentle Good Samaritan, who stopped and held a helping hand to all. No term that savored of unfriendliness, no censure through those pure lips ever passed. He saw the erring spirit's keen distress, and hoped for it, long suffering to the last. Moreover, in these days when faith grows faint, and heaven seems blurred by speculation wild, he, blameless as a medieval saint, had all the trust which sanctifies a child. But now he sleeps, and as the years go by, will often pause above his sacred dust, and think how grand a thing it is to die, the noble death which defies the just. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Rizpah by Henry Kendall. Read for LibriVox.org by Larry Wilson. Said one who led the spears of swarthy Gad to Jesse's mighty son, "My lord, O king, I, halting hard by Gibeon's bleak blown hill, 3 nightfalls past, saw dark eyed Rizpah, clad in dripping sackcloth, pace with naked feet the flinty rock where lie unburied yet the sons of Hur and Saul. And he whose post of watch is in those places desolate got up and spake unto thy servant here concerning her, yea, even unto me. Behold, he said, the woman seeks not rest, nor fire, nor food, nor roof, nor any haunt where sojourns man, but rather on yon rock abideth like a wild thing with the slain, and watcheth them, lest evil wing or paw should light upon the comely faces dead, to spoil them of their beauty. 3 long moons hath Rizpah, daughter of Ea, dwelt with drouth and cold and rain and wind by turns, and many birds there are that know her face, and many beasts that flee not at her step, and many cunning eyes do look at her from serpent holes and burrows of the rat. Moreover spake the scout, her skin is brown and sere by reason of exceeding heat, and all her darkness of abundant hair is shot with grey, because of many nights when grief hath crouched in fellowship with frost upon that desert rock. Yea, thus and thus fares Rizpah, said the spy, O king, to me. But David, son of Jesse, spake no word, but turned himself and wept against the wall. We have our Rizpahs in these modern days, who've lost their households through no sin of theirs, on bloody fields and in the pits of war. And though their dead were sheltered in the sod by friendly hands, these have not suffered less than she of Judah did, nor is their love surpassed by hers. The bard who in great days afar off yet shall set to epic song the grand pathetic story of the strife that shook America for 5 long years, and struck its homes with desolation, he shall in lofty verse relate to men how through the heat and havoc of that time Columbia's Rachel in her Ramah wept her children and would not be comforted, and sing of woman waiting day by day with that high patience that no man attains, for tidings from the bitter field of spouse or son or brother or some other love set face to face with death. Moreover he shall say how through her sleepless hours at night, when rain or leaves were dropping, every noise seemed like an omen, every coming step fell on her ears like a presentiment, and every hand that rested on the door she fancied was a herald bearing grief, while every letter brought a faintness on that made her gasp before she opened it, to read the story written before her eyes, and cry or brighten over its contents. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Kiama Revisited by Henry Kendall. Read for LibriVox.org by Lynda Marie Neilson, Vancouver, BC. We stood by the window and hearkened to the voice of the runnels sea driven, while northward the mountain heads darkened, girt round with the clamours of heaven. One peak with the storm at his portal loomed out to the left of his brothers, sustained and sublimed and immortal, a king and the lord of the others. Beneath him a cry from the surges rang shrill like a clarion calling, and about him the wind of the gorges went falling and rising and falling. But I, as the roofs of the thunder were cloven with manifold fires, turned back from the wail and the wonder, and dreamed of old days and desires. A song that was made I remembered, a song that was made in the gloaming of suns which are sunken and numbered with times that my heart hath no home in. But I said to my dream, I am calmer than waters asleep on the river. I can look at the hills of Kiama and bury that dead past forever. Past sight, out of mind, alienated, said the dream to me wearily sighing. Ah, where is the winter you mated? To love is decline and it's dying. Here, 5 years ago, there were places that knew of her cunning to grieve you, But alas, for her eyes and her graces! And wherefore and how did she leave you? Have you hidden the ways of this woman, her whispers, her glances, her power, to hold you as demon holds human, chained back to the day and the hour? Say, where have you buried her sweetness, her coldness for youth and its yearning? In the sleep of your sorrow a witness, she is past all the roads of returning. Was she left with your beauty, O lover, and the shreds of your passion about her, beyond reach and where none can discover? Ah, where is the wide world without her? I answered, behold, I was broken, because of this bright, bitter maiden, who helped me with never a token, to beat down the dark I had strayed in. She knew that my soul was entangled by what was too fiery to bear then, nor cared how she withered and strangled my life with her eyes and her hair then. But I have not leapt to the level where light and the shadows dissever. She is fair, but a beautiful devil that I have forgotten forever. She is sweeter than music or singing, said the dream to me heavily moaning. Her voice in your slumber is ringing, and where is the end, the atoning? Can you look at the red of the roses? Are you friend of the fields and the flowers? Can you bear the faint day as it closes and dies into twilighted hours? Do you love the low notes of the ballad she sang in her darling old fashion? And I whispered, "O dream, I am pallid, and perished because of my passion." But the wrath withered out, and the rifted grey hills gleaming over the granges stood robed with moon rainbows that shifted and shimmered resplendent with changes, while for the dim ocean ledges the storm and the surges were blended. Sheer down the bluff sides of the ridges spent winds and the waters descended. The forests, the crags, and the forelands grew sweet with the stars after raining. But out of the north lying moorlands I heard the lone plover complaining. From these to Kiama half hidden in a yellow sea mist on the slopings of hills by the torrents beridden, I turned with my aches and my hopings, saying this: there are those that are taken by fate to wear love as a raiment, whose texture is trouble with breaking of youth and no hope of repayment. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Passing Away by Henry Kendall. Read for LibriVox.org by Nemo. Passing away. The spirit of beautiful faces, the light on the forehead of love, and the spell of past visited places, and the songs and the sweetness thereof. These, touched by a hand that is hoary, these, vexed with a tune of decay, are spoiled of their glow and their glory, and the burden is passing away, passing away. Old years and their changes come trooping at nightfall to you and to me, when autumn sits faded and drooping by the sorrowful waves of the sea. Faint phantoms that float in the gloaming return with the whispers that say, the end which is quiet is coming. Ye are weary and passing away, passing away. It is hard to awake and discover the swiftness that waits upon time, but youth and its beauty are over, and love has a sigh in its rhyme. The life that looks back and remembers is troubled and tired and gray, and sick of the sullen Decembers, whose burden is passing away, passing away. We have wandered and wandered together, and our joys have been many and deep, but seasons of alien weather have ended in longings for sleep. Pale purpose and perishing passion, with never a farewell to say, die down into sobs of suppression. The burden is passing away, passing away. We loved the soft tangle of tresses, the lips that were fain and afraid, and the silence of far wildernesses, with their dower of splendor and shade. For faces of sweetness we waited, in days of delight and delay, ere time and its voices were mated, to a voice that sighs, passing away, passing away. O years interwoven with stories of strong aspirations and high, how fleet and how false were the glories that lived in your limited sky. Here, sitting by ruinous altars of promise, what word shall we say to the speech that the rainy wind falters, whose burden is passing away, passing away? End of poem. This recording is in public domain.
James Lionel Michael by Henry Kendall. Read for LibriVox.org by Lynda Marie Neilson, Vancouver, BC. Be his rest, the rest he sought, calm and deep. Let no wayward word or thought vex his sleep. Peace, the peace that no man knows, now remains, where the wasted woodwind blows, wakes and wanes. Latter leaves, in autumn's breath, white and sere, sanctify the scholar's death, lying here. Soft surprises of the sun, swift, serene, o'er the mute grave grasses run, cold and green. Wet and cold the hill winds moan, let them rave. Love that takes a tender tone lights his grave. He who knew the friendless face, sorrow's shoe, often sought this quiet place, years ago. One, too apt to faint and fail, loved to stray, here where water shallows wail, day by day. Care that lays her heavy hand on the best, bound him with an iron hand, let him rest. Life that flieth like a tune left his eyes, as an April afternoon leaves the skies. Peace is best, if life was hard. Peace came next. Thus the scholar, thus the bard, lies unvexed, safely housed at last from wrack, far from pain. Who would wish to have him back? Back again? Let the forms he loved so well hover near, shine of hill and shade of dell, year by year. All the wilful waifs that make beauty's face, let them sojourn for his sake round this place. Flying splendors, singing streams, lutes and lights, may they be as happy dreams. Sounds and sights, so that time to love may say, wherefore weep? Sweet is sleep at close of day, death is sleep. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Elijah by Henry Kendall. Read for LibriVox.org by Larry Wilson. In that good old Hebrew soul sublime the spirit of the wilderness had passed. For where the thunders of imperial storm rolled over mighty hills, and where the caves of cloud-capped Horeb rang with hurricane, and where wild-featured solitude did hold supreme dominion, there the prophet saw and heard and felt that large mysterious life which lies remote from cities, in the woods and rocks and waters of the mountained earth. And so it came to pass, Elijah caught that scholarship which gave him power to see and solve the deep divinity that lies with nature under lordly forest domes and by the seas. And so his spirit waxed, made strong and perfect by its fellowship with God's authentic world, until his eyes became a splendor, and his face was a glory with the vision of the seer. Thereafter, thundering in the towns of men, his voice, a trumpet of the Lord, did shake all evil to its deep foundations. He, the hairy man who ran before the king, like some wild spectre fleeting through the storm, what time Jezreel's walls were smitten hard by fourfold wind and rain. 'Twas he who slew the liars at the altars of the gods, and at the very threshold of a throne heaped curses on its impious lord. 'Twas he Jehovah raised to grapple sin that stalked arrayed about with kingship, and to strike through gold and purple to the heart of it. And therefore falsehood quaked before his face, and tyranny grew dumb at sight of him, and lust and murder raged abroad no more. But where these were he walked, a shining sun of truth, and cleared and sanctified the land. Not always was the dreaded Tishbite stern, the scourge of despots. When he saw the face of love and sorrow by the bed of death, grew tender as a maid. And she who missed a little mouth that used to catch and cling a small sweet trouble at her yearning breast. Yea, she of Zarephath, who sat and mourned the silence of a bird-like voice that made her flutter with the joy of motherhood in other days, she came to know the heart of pity that the rugged prophet had. And when he took the soft, still child away and laid it on his bed, and in the dark sent up a pleading voice to heaven, and drew the little body to his breast, and held it there until the bright young soul returned to earth again, the gladdened woman saw a radiant beauty in Elijah's eyes, and knew the stranger was a man of God. We want a new Elijah in these days, a mighty spirit clad in shining arms of truth, yea, one whose lifted voice would break like thunder on our modern apathy, and shake the fanes of falsehood from their domes down to the firm foundations, one whose words, directly coming from a source divine, would fall like flame where vice holds festival, and search the inmost hearts of nations, one made godlike with that scholarship supreme which comes of suffering, one with eyes to see the very core of things, with hands to grasp high opportunities and use them for his glorious mission, one whose face inspired would wear a terror for the lying soul, but seem a glory in the sight of those who make the light and sweetness of the world, and are the high priests of the beautiful. Yea, one like this we want amongst us now, to drive away the evil fogs that choke our social atmosphere, and leave it clear and pure and hallowed with authentic light. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. Manasseh by Henry Kendall, read for LibriVox.org by Larry Wilson. Manasseh, lord of Judah, and the son of him who, favored of Jehovah, saw at midnight, when the skies were flushed with fire, the splendid mystery of the shining air, that flamed above the black Assyrian camps, and breathed upon the evil hosts at rest, and shed swift violent sleep into their eyes. Manasseh, lord of Judah, when he came to fortify himself upon his throne, and saw great strength was gathered unto him, let slip satanic passions he had nursed for years and years. And lo, the land that he who thundered on the oriental mount, girt round with awful light, had set apart for Jacob's seed, the land that Moses strained on Nebo's topmost cone to see, grew black beneath the shadow of despotic sin that stalked on footways dashed with human blood, and mocked high heaven by audacious fires, and as when storm, that voice of God, is loud within the mountain Syrian wilderness, there flits a wailing through the wilted pines, so in the city of the wicked king a voice, like Abel's, crying from the ground, made sorrow of the broken evening winds, and darkness of the fair young morning lights, and silence in the homes of hunted men. But in a time when gray-winged autumn fogs shut off the sun from Carmel's seaward side, and fitful gusts did speak within the trees of rain beyond the waters, while the priests of Hינon's echoing valley offered up unhallowed sacrifices unto gods of brass and stone, there came a trumpet's voice along the bald, bleak northern flats, and then a harnessed horseman, riding furiously, dashed down the ridge with an exceeding cry of Esarhaddon, Esarhaddon, haste away, ye elders! Lo, the swarthy foe 6 leagues from hence hath made the land afire, and all the dwellers of the hollowed hills are flying hitherwards before a flame of 50,000 swords. At this the men of Baal turned about, set face, and fled towards the thickets, where the impious king, ringed about by grey gaunt wizards with the brand of Belial on their features, cowered low, and hid himself amongst the tangled thorns, and shivered in a bitter sea-born wind, and caught the whiteness of a deathly fear. There, where the ash-pale forest leaves were touched by morning's shining fingers, and the inland depths sent out rain-plenished voices west and south, the steel-clad scouts of Esarhaddon came, and searched, and found Manasseh, whom they bound and dragged before the swart Assyrian king. And Esarhaddon, scourge of heaven, sent to strange evil at its chiefest fanes, and so fulfill a dread divine decree, took Judah's despot fettered hand and foot, and cast him bleeding on a dungeon floor hard by where swift Euphrates chafes his brink, and gleams from cataract to cataract, and gives the gale a deep midwinter tone. So fared Manasseh for the sins which brought pale-featured desolation to the tents of alienated Judah. But one night, when 90 moons of wild unrest had passed, the humbled son of Hezekiah turned himself towards the wall, and prayed and wept. And in an awful darkness, face to face with God, he said, I know, O Lord of hosts, that thou art wise and just and kind, and I am shapen in iniquity. But by the years of black captivity, whose days and nights have marked my spirit passing through fierce furnaces of suffering, and seen it groping in blind shadows with a hope to reach thy hand. By these, O Father, these that brought the swift, sad silver to my head, which should have come with age, which came with pain, I pray thee, hear these supplications now, and stoop and lift me from my low estate, and lend me this once my dominionship, so I may strive to live the bad past down, and lead henceforth a white and wholesome life, and be thy contrite servant, Lord, indeed. The prayer was not in vain, for while the storm sang high above the dim Chaldean domes, while in the pines the spirit of the rain sobbed fitfully, Jehovah's angel came and made a splendor of the dungeon walls, and smote the bars, and led Manasseh forth, and caught him up, nor set him down again until the turrets of Jerusalem sprang white before the flying travellers against the congregated morning hills. And he, the broken man, made whole again, was faithful to his promise. Every day thereafter passing bore upon its wings some shining record of his faultless life, some brightness of a high resolve fulfilled, and in good time, when all the land had rest, he found that he had lived the bad past down, and gave God praise, and with his father slept. Thus ends the story of Manasseh. If this verse should catch the eyes of one whose sin lies heavy on his soul, who finds himself a shame-faced alien when he walks abroad, a moping shadow when he sits at home, who has no human friends, who day by day is smitten down by icy level looks from that cold virtue which is merciless because it knoweth not what wrestling with a fierce temptation means, if such a one should read my tale of Hezekiah's son, Let him take heart, and gather up his strength, and step above man's scorn, and find his way by paths of fire, as brave Manasseh did, up to the white heights of a blameless life. And it will come to pass that in the face of gray old enmities, whose partial eyes are blind to reformation, he will taste a sweetness in his thoughts, and live his time arrayed with the efficient armor of that noble power which grows of self-respect and makes a man a pillar in the world. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Caroline Chisholm by Henry Kendall. Read for LibriVox.org by Sandra. Caroline Chisholm. A perfect woman, nobly planned, to warn, to comfort, and command. The priests and the Levites went forth to feast at the courts of the kings. They were vain of their greatness and worth, and gladdened with glittering things. They were fair in the favour of gold, and they walked on with delicate feet, where, famished and faint with the cold, the women fell down in the street. The priests and the Levites looked round, all vexed and perplexed at the cries of the maiden who crouched to the ground with the madness of want in her eyes. And they muttered, "Few praises are earned when good hath been wrought in the dark. While the backs of the people are turned, we choose not to loiter or hark." Moreover they said, "It is fair that our deeds in the daylight should shine. If we feasted you, who would declare that we gave you our honey and wine?" They gathered up garments of gold, and they stepped with their delicate feet, and the women who famished with cold were left with the snow in the street. The winds and the rains were abroad, the homeless looked vainly for alms, and they prayed in the dark to the Lord with agony clenched in their palms. "There is none of us left that is whole," they cried through their faltering breath. "We are clothed with a sickness of soul, and the shape of the shadow of death." He heard them, and turned to the earth. "I am pained," said the Lord, "at the woe of my children so smitten with dearth. But the night of their trouble shall go." He called on his chosen to come. She listened, and hastened to rise, and he charged her to build them a home where the tears should be dried from their eyes. God's servant came forth from the south. She told of a plentiful land, and wisdom was set in her mouth, and strength in the thews of her hand. She lifted them out of their fear, and they thought her their Moses, and said, "We shall follow you, sister, from here to the country of sunshine and bread." She fed them, and led them away through tempest and tropical heat, till they reached the far regions of day, and sweet-scented spaces of wheat. She hath made them a home with her hand, and they bloom like the summery vines, for they eat of the fat of the land, and drink of its glittering wines. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Mount Erebus by Henry Kendall. Read for LibriVox.org by Phil Schempf. A fragment. A mighty theatre of snow and fire, girt with perpetual winter, and sublime by reason of that lordly solitude which dwells forever at the world's white ends. And in that weird-faced wilderness of ice there is no human foot, nor any paw or hoof of beast, but where the shrill winds drive the famished birds of storm across the tracks whose centre is the dim mysterious pole. Beyond, yea, far beyond the homes of man, by water never dark with coming ships, near seas that know not feather, scale, or fin, the grand volcano, like a weird Isaiah set in that utmost region of the earth, doth thunder forth the awful utterance, whose syllables are flame, and when the fierce Arctic night doth hold dominionship within her fastnesses, then round the cone of Erebus a crown of tenfold light appears, and shafts of marvellous splendour shoot far out to east and west and south and north, whereat a gorgeous dome of glory roofs wild leagues of mountain and transfigured waves, and lends all things a beauty terrible. Far-reaching lands, whereon the hand of change hath never rested since the world began, lie here in fearful fellowship with cold and rain and tempest. Here colossal horns of hills start up and take the polar fogs, shot through with flying stars of fire. And here above the dead grey crescents, topped with spires of thunder smoke, one half the heaven flames with that supremest light, whose glittering life is yet a marvel unto all but one, the entity almighty, whom we feel is nearest us when we are face to face with nature's features aboriginal, and in the hearing of her primal speech, and in the thraldom of her primal power. While like the old Chaldean king who waxed insane with pride, we humans grow to think we are the mightiest of the world, and lords of all terrestrial things. Behold, the sea rolls in with a superb disdain upon our peopled shores, omnipotent. And while we set up things of clay and call our idols gods, and while we boast or fume about the petty honors or the poor, pale disappointments of our meager lives, lo, changed us as eternity itself, the grand Arctic mountain looms outside all breathing life, and with its awful speech is an emblem of the power supreme, whose thunders shake the boundless universe, whose lightnings make a terror of all space. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Our Jack by Henry Kendall, read for LibriVox.org by Lynda Marie Neilson, Vancouver, BC. 12 years ago our Jack was lost, all night. 12 years ago the spirit of the storm sobbed round our camp, a wind of northern hills, that hold a cold companionship with clouds, came down and wrestled like a giant with the iron-featured woods, and fall and ford, the night our Jack was lost, sent forth a cry of baffled waters where the Murray sucked. The rain replenished torrents at his source, and gathered strength, and started for the sea. We took our Jack from Melbourne just 2 weeks. Before this day 12 years ago, he left a home where love upon the threshold paused, and wept across the shoulder of the lad, and blessed us when we said we'd take good care to keep the idol of the house from harm. We were a band of 3. We started thence to look for watered lands and pastures new, with faces set towards the down beyond, where cool Monero's topmost mountain breaks the wings of many a seaward-going storm, and shapes them into wreaths of subtle fire. We were, I say, a band of 3 in all, with brother Tom for leader, bright-eyed Jack, who thought himself as big a man as Tom, was self-elected second in command, and I was cook and groom. A week slipped by, brimful of life, of health and happiness, for though our progress northward had been slow, because the country on the track was rough, no one amongst us let his spirits flag. Moreover, being young, and at the stage when all things novel wear a fine romance, we found in ridge and glen, and wood and rock, and waterfall, and everything that dwells outside with nature, pleasure of that kind, which only lives for those whose hearts are tired of noisy cities, and are fain to feel the peace and power of the mighty hills. The second week we crossed the upper fork, where Murray meets a river from the east, and there one evening dark with coming storm, we camped a furlong from the bank. Our Jack, the little man that used to sing and shout, and start the merry echoes of the cliffs, and gravely helped me to put up the tent, and try 1,000 tricks and offices, that made me scold and laugh by turns, the pet of sisters and the youngest hope of one, who grew years older in a single night. Our Jack, I say, strayed off into the dusk, lured by the noises of a waterfall, and though we hunted, shouting right and left, the whole night long through wind and rain, and searched, for 5 days afterwards we never saw the lad again. I turned to Tom and said, "That wild 5th evening, which of us has heart enough to put the saddle on our swiftest horse, and post away to Melbourne, there to meet, and tell his mother we have lost her son? Or which of us can bear to stand and see the white affliction of a faded face, made old by you and me? O Tom, my boy, her heart will break." Tom moaned, but did not speak a word. He saddled horse, and galloped off. "O Jack, Jack, Jack!" when bright-haired Benjamin was sent to Egypt with his father's sons, those rough half-brothers took more care of him than we of you. But shall we never see your happy face, my brave lad, any more, nor hear you whistling in the fields at eve, nor catch you up to mischief with your knife amongst the apple trees, nor find you out, a truant playing on the road to school, nor meet you, boy, in any other guise you used to take? Is this worn cap I hold the only thing you've left us of yourself? Are we to sit from night to night deceived through rainy seasons by presentiments that make us start at shadows on the pane, and fancy that we hear you in the dark, and wonder that your step has grown so slow, and listen for your hand upon the door? End of poem. This reading is in the public domain. Camped by the Creek by Henry Kendall. Read for LibriVox.org by Lynda Marie Neilson, Vancouver, BC. All day a strong sun has been drinking the ponds in the wattle tree glen, and now as their puddles I am thinking we were wise to head hitherwards, men. The country is heavy to nor'ard, but Lord, how you rattled along! Jack's chestnut best leg was put forward, and the bay from the start galloped strong. But for Bottom I'd stake my existence. There's none of the lot like the mare, for look, she has come the whole distance, with never the turn of a hair. But now let us stop for the supper. Will want us to-morrow by noon, and as he can swear like a trooper, we can't be a minute too soon. Here, Dick, you can hobble the filly, and Chestnut, but don't take a week, and Jack, hurry off with the billy, and Philip will camp by the creek. So spoke the old stockman, and quickly we made ourselves snug for the night. The smoke wreaths above us curled thickly, for our pipes were the first thing alight. As we sat round a fire that only a well-seasoned bushman can make, for our forest grew silent and lonely, though the paw was astir in the brake. But not till our supper was ended, and not till old Bill was asleep, did wild things by wonder attended in shot of our camping ground creep. Scared eyes from the thick tuff and tree hollow gleamed out through the forest boles stark, and ever a hurry would follow of fugitive feet in the dark, while Dick and I yarned and talked over old times that had gone like the sun. The wail of the desolate plover came up from the swamps in the run, and sniffling our supper elated, from his den the red dingo crawled out, but skulked in the darkness and waited, like a cunning but cowardly scout. Thereafter came sleep that soon falls on a man who has ridden all day, and when midnight had deepened the palls on the hills we were snoring away. But ere we dozed off the wild noises of forest, of fen, and of stream grew strange and were one with the voices that died with a sweet semi-dream, and the tones of the waterfall blended with the song of the wind on the shore, became a soft psalm that ascended, grew far, and we heard it no more. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. Euterpe by Henry Kendall. Read for LibriVox.org by Lynda Neilson, Vancouver, BC. A Canada, set to music by C. E. Horsley, and sung at the opening of the Melbourne Town Hall, 1870. Argument. Hail to thee, sound, the power of Euterpe in all the scenes of life, in religion, in works of charity, in soothing troubles by means of music, in all humane and high purposes, in war, in grief, in the social circle, the children's lullaby, the dance, the ballad, in conviviality, when far from home, at evening, the whole ending with an allegorical chorus, rejoicing at the building of a mighty hall erected for the recreation of a nation destined to take no inconsiderable part in the future history of the world. Overture, Number 1, Chorus. All hail to thee, sound, since the time Calliope's son took the lyre, and lulled in the heart of their clime the demons of darkness and fire, since Eurydice's lover brought tears to the eyes of the Prince of Night. Thou hast been, through the world's weary years, a marvelous source of delight, yea, a marvelous source of delight. In the wind, in the wave, in the fall of the water, each note of thine dwells. But Euterpe hath gathered from all the sweetest to weave into spells. She makes a miraculous power of thee with her magical skill, and gives us, for bounty or dower, the accents that soothe us or thrill. Yea, the accents that soothe us or thrill. All hail to thee, sound. Let us thank the great giver of light and of life, for the music divine that we've drank in seasons of peace and of strife. Let us gratefully think of the balm that falls on humanity tired, at the tones of the song or the psalm, from lips and from fingers inspired. Yea, from lips and from fingers inspired. Number 2, Quartet and Chorus. When, in her secret fanes, God's daughter, sweet religion, prays Euterpe's holier strains, her thoughts from earth to heaven raise, the organ notes sublime put every worldly dream to flight. They sanctify the time, and fill the place with hallowed light. Number 3, Soprano Solo. Yea, And when that meek-eyed maiden, men call Charity, comes fain to raise up spirits laden with bleak poverty and pain, often, in her cause enlisted, music softens hearts like stones, and the fallen are assisted through Interp's wondrous tones. 4. Orchestral Intermezzo. 5. Chorus. Beautiful is sound devoted to all ends humane and high, and its sweetness never floated like a thing unheeded by. Power it has on souls encrusted with the selfishness of years, yea, and thousands Mammon rusted. Hear it, feel it, leave in tears. 6. Choral recitative. Men's voices only. When on the battlefield and in the sight of tens of thousands bent to smite and slay their human brothers, how the soldier's heart must leap at sounds of martial music fired with all that spirit that the patriot loves, who seeks to win or nobly fall for home. 7. Triumphal March. 8. Funeral Chorus. Slowly and mournfully moves a procession, wearing the signs of sorrow through loss, and it halts like a shadow of death in the pines. Come from the fane that is filled with God's presence, sad sounds and deep. Holy Euterpe, she sings of our brother. We listen and weep. Death, like the angel that passed over Egypt, struck at us sore. Never again shall we turn at our loved one's step at the door. 9. Chorus. Soprano voices only. But passing from sorrow, the spirit of music a glory doth rove, where it lightens the features of beauty, and burns through the accents of love, the passionate accents of love. 10. Lullaby Song. Contralto. The nightshades gather, and the sea sends up a sound sonorous, deep. The plover's wail comes down the lea, by slope and vale the vapors weep, and dew is on the tree. And now where homesteads be, the children fall asleep, asleep. A low-voiced wind amongst the leaves, the sighing leaves that mourn the spring, like some lone spirit, flits and grieves and flits on fitful wing. But where song is a guest, a lulling, dreamy thing, the children fall to rest, to rest. 11. Waltz Chorus. When the summer moon is beaming on the stirless waters dreaming, and the keen gray summits gleaming through a silver starry haze, in our homes to strains entrancing, to the steps, the quickly glancing, steps of youths and maidens dancing, maidens light of foot as fays. Then the waltz, whose rhythmic paces make melodious happy places, brings a brightness to young faces, brings a sweetness to the eyes, sounds that move us like enthralling accents where the runnel falling sends out flute-like voices calling where the sweet wild moss-bed lies. 12. Ballad, tenor. When twilight guides with ghostly tread across the western heights, and in the east the hills are red with sunset's fading lights, then music floats from cot and hall where social circles met, by sweet Euterpe held in thrall, their daily cares forgot. What joy it is to watch the shine that hallows beauty's face, when woman sings the strains divine, whose passion floods the place. Then how the thoughts and feelings rove at song's inspiring breath, in homes made beautiful by love, or sanctified by death. What visions come, what dreams arise, what Eden's youth will limn, when leaning over her whose eyes has sweetened life for him. For while she sings and while she plays, and while her voice is low, his fancy paints diviner days than any we can know. Number 13. Drinking Song. Men's voices only. But hurrah for the table that heavily groans with the good things that keep in the life, when we sing and we dance and we drink to the tones that are masculine, thorough, and blithe. Good luck to us all, over walnuts and wine. We hear the rare songs that we know are as brimful of mirth as the spring is of shine, and as healthy and hearty, we trow. Then our glasses we charge to the ring of the stave, that the flush to our faces doth send. For though life is a thing that winds up with the grave, we'll be jolly, my boys, to the end. Hurrah, hurrah! Yes, jolly, my boys, to the end. Number 14. Recitative, bass. When far from friends and home and all things that bind a man to life, how dear to him is any old familiar sound that takes him back to spots where love and hope in past days used to wander hand in hand across high-flowered meadows and the paths whose borders shared the beauty of the spring and borrowed splendor from autumnal suns. Number 15. Chorus. The voices accompanied only by the violins playing Home Sweet Home. Then at sea or in wildwood, then ashore or afloat, all the scenes of his childhood come back at a note, at the turn of a ballad, at the tones of a song. Cometh memory, pallid and speechless so long, and she points with her finger to phantom-like years, and loveth to linger in silence, in tears. Number 16. Solo, bass. In the yellow flame of evening sounds of music come and go, through the noises of the river and the drifting of the snow. In the yellow flames of evening, at the setting of the day, sounds that lighten, fall and lighten, flicker, faint, and fade away. What they are, behold, we know not, but their honey slakes and slays. Half the want which whitens manhood is the stress of alien days, even as a wondrous woman, struck with love and great desire, hast thou been to us, Euterpe, half of tears and half of fire, but thy joy is swift and fitful, and a subtle sense of pain sighs through thy melodious breathings, takes the rapture from thy strain. In the yellow flame of evening, sounds of music come and go, through the noises of the river and the drifting of the snow. Number 17. Recitative, soprano. And thus it is that music manifold in fanes, in passion sanctuaries, or where the social feast is held, is still the power that blindeth heart to heart, and whether grief, or love, or pleasure form the link, we know 'tis still a bond that makes humanity, that wearied entity, a single whole, and soothes the trouble of the heart bereaved, and lulls the beatings in the breast that yearns, and gives more gladness to the gladdest things. Number 18, Finale, Chorus. Now a vision comes, O brothers blended, with supremest sounds of harmony, comes and shows a temple, stately, splendid, in a radiant city by the sea. Founders, fathers of a mighty nation, raised the walls and built the royal dome, gleaming now from lofty lordly station, like a dream of Athens or of Rome, and a splendor of sound, a thunder of song, rolls sea-like around, comes sea-like along. The ringing and ringing and ringing of voices of choristers singing, inspired by a national joy, strike through the marvelous hall, fly by the aisle and the wall, while the organ notes roam from basement to dome, now low as a wail, now loud as a gale, and as grand as the music that builded old Troy. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Sedan by Henry Kendall. Read for LibriVox.org by Ruben Whitter. Another battle, and the sounds have rolled by many a gloomy gorge and wasted plain over huddled hills and mountains manifold, like winds that run before a heavy rain when autumn lops the leaves and drooping grain, and earth lies deep in brown and cloudy gold. My brothers, lo! Our grand old England stands with weapons gleaming in her ready hands. Outside the tumult, let us watch and trust that she will never darken in the dust and drift of wild contention, but remain the hope and stay of many troubled lands, where so she waits the issue of the fight, aloof but praying, God, defend the right. End of early poems by Henry Kendall.